How does a platoon go from mutinying against their leader
All 12 miles of the march immediately.
Yes, sir.
Fall out!
to becoming one of the most decorated and revered companies in American history?
That's how it's done, Shifty.
Well, put away your history books because we're about to cover one of the greatest miniseries of all time, Band of Brothers. Based on the book by Stephen E. Ambrose, the show follows the true events of Easy Company, the 2nd Battalion of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division during the Second World War. Let's just stick with Easy Company, huh? What's cool about this show is that each episode opens with interviews from the real soldiers of Easy Company, giving us a little more insight into the events pertaining to each episode. The show's got as much drama as it's got history. What more could you want? Regardless, this show does deal with a lot of intense subject matter, so feel free to check out another one of our more lighthearted videos. You have been warned. Alright, let's get into it. The first episode, Currahee, begins on June 4th, 1944, 2 days before D-Day. Easy Company and many other companies are preparing to invade Normandy. There's a lot of tension in the air, but it's all for naught as everyone is informed the invasion has been postponed 24 hours due to bad weather. So everyone nervously awaits the hour they will leave by watching a Cary Grant film. Everyone, that is, except for the platoon's second in command, Richard Dick Winters, and his loyal friend Lewis Nixon. Winters is a quiet but resolute leader, while Nixon is the alcoholic cynic of the duo. The two men reflect on all that's happened in the past 2 years during their training at Camp Toccoa as the episode flashes back. Here, they're trained to be paratroopers under the command of strict First Lieutenant Herbert Sobel, who constantly goes out of his way to find any minuscule fault with Easy Company. Put simply, the guy doesn't understand the difference between leading by fear and leading by example. Sobel also has a habit of revoking all their weekend passes every week for just the tiniest infractions, and forces them to run the Currahee, which is a 6-mile run up and down a merciless hill. This is something Sobel does to them every week, and the rest of the men are sick of Sobel's unrelenting wrath. None of the Easy Company would have been able to get through the intense pain of Sobel had it not been for Winters, who is clearly the better leader.
And under my command, this will be the first and finest company in this regiment.
Later, Sobel's efforts get rewarded as he's promoted by Colonel Robert Sink. Sobel is grateful, until Sink also promotes Winters to Sobel's second in command when Sink sees how exemplary he's been too. Sobel doesn't like to share his credit, so he retaliates by putting Winters in mess hall duty and serving a lot of spaghetti to Easy Company. Sobel then surprises everyone after they've just stuffed their face with pasta by forcing them to run up Currahee, which results in a lot of puking. Now that is cruel and unusual punishment. In the end, the men officially become paratroopers, and 1 year later their training shifts into combat. It's here that Sobel's inadequacy of a leader in the field becomes evident, as he makes everyone else in Easy Company look bad during each exercise. If Easy Company didn't have any respect for Sobel then, they certainly don't now.
Either the crowd still get him, or one of us.
Eventually, they ship out to England for more training. During an exercise, Easy Company is split into 2 groups with Winters leading one group and Sobel leading the other. Sobel realizes they are lost when they come to a barbed wire fence that is not supposed to be there, so he has his men take cover behind some nearby trees. Easy Company takes this opportunity to play a prank on Sobel when one of them, named George Luce, imitates a major from behind the trees.
Is there a problem, Captain Sobel?
Who said that?
I think it's Major Horton, sir.
Sobel nearly craps himself when he thinks that he hears the major, and Luce tricks Sobel into cutting through the fence that belonged to an innocent farmer. Sobel then gets chewed out by his superiors, while Winters gets even more respect from his men. Sobel retaliates again by court-martialing Winters over something as petty such as failing to report to the latrine inspection, and gives Winters the option to accept a punishment or the court-martial. Sobel expects Winters to take the punishment, but Winters gives Sobel the middle finger and takes the trial by court-martial instead. Several others in Easy Company, including Denver Bull Randleman, William Wild Bill Garnier, John Johnny Martin, and Carwood Lipton, have realized Sobel's gonna get them killed, so they try to mutiny, despite the risk of getting sent to the firing squad. Sink finds out, but spares their lives because he needs every man to invade Europe. In the end, Sink reassigns Sobel to command a parachuting school for non-infantry personnel.
You are such a tattletale!
Winters doesn't get Sobel's job, as it goes to First Lieutenant Thomas Meehan III, but at least Easy Company will have a better chance at making it to Berlin. Jumping forward to when the episode began, Winters still works under Meehan, alongside another officer, Lynn Buck Compton. Each platoon has their assigned targets and objectives for the largest seaborne invasion in history, and Easy Company will have the task of taking out a strategic German garrison 5 hours before the attack. After getting delayed because of bad weather, the day finally arrives for Easy Company to partake in Operation Overlord, aka the invasion of Normandy. They all board their respective planes and anxiously await to make the jump they've been training 2 years for. The next episode picks up right where we left off as Easy Company's planes fly over pitch black darkness. Eventually they come under heavy artillery fire and all hell breaks loose. This forces everyone to jump miles before they've reached the drop zone. It scatters everyone. Not a great start.
All I got is this knife and some TNT. These 82nd boys got there in one, so.
Through the use of code words and a bit of luck, most of the scattered platoons manage to regroup. With nothing but a compass and even more luck, Easy Company manages to make their way to their target. At the meeting point, one of the members of Easy Company, Donald Malarkey, taunts a couple of captured German soldiers. He then discovers that one of them was born and raised not far from where he was, and the two of them start bonding. Malarkey is called away, and as he leaves, he sees the German soldiers, including the one that grew up in America, gunned down by Ronald Spears, the platoon leader of Dog Company. During this, Winters learns from Buck that Meehan's plane is missing, so as of right now, Winters is in charge. Winters briefs the men on their objective, which is to take out 4 guns overlooking Utah Beach from Breakor Manor, so the Marines can land on the beach and be heroes. It's easier said than done though, because there's knowing how many Germans are there, and they're still missing the majority of Easy Company. Basically, they're outnumbered and outgunned. They assault Breakor Manor using small unit tactics, and thanks to Winters and Buck's leadership, they're able to destroy each gun. During this, Winters discovers a map showing all the other German artillery units along Normandy. He gives the map to HQ and Nixon assures him that it'll do some good, but all Winters can think about is how lucky he was to survive D-Day, and prays to God that he can survive D-Day +1, so he can make it back home. In the end, everyone in Easy Company was given medals for taking Breakor Manor, and their assault is still demonstrated today by military academies. Part 3 begins 2 days after D-Day and follows the story of shell-shocked Albert Blythe, as he finally gets reunited with Easy Company. Their mission now is to take Carentan, as it is the only place where the troops at Utah and Omaha Beach can link up and head inland. En route, Blythe comes across a dead German paratrooper and finds an Edelweiss flower in his collar. Nixon explains that Edelweiss flowers only grow in a certain place in the Swiss Alps, and he had climbed up there to get it, as it symbolizes the mark of a true soldier. Easy Company reaches Carentan. A bloody battle ensues in trying to take it. Blythe struggles to fight, and things get even more hairy when the Germans start sending in Zeros. Despite losing many men, Easy Company is able to take Carentan. Towards the end, a bullet ricochets into Winter's leg, and he gets medical attention. It's here that he finds a scared Blythe huddled in a corner, suffering from hysterical blindness. Winters comforts him, and it helps Blythe recover, but he's ashamed he froze during the fighting. Later, Blythe hears from Warren Skip Muck about Spears killing another group of surrendered German soldiers, and no one can believe it's true. Easy Company then moves out, where they are pinned down by another German platoon. Neither side advances, so they're stuck there as night falls. Blythe struggles to get some sleep and runs into Spears. Blythe is still jumpy with everything going on and opens up to Spears that he fell asleep in a ditch during D-Day and never bothered to find his unit. Spears tells Blythe that the reason he stayed in that ditch was because he had hope, but that he needs to accept the fact that he's already dead.
Without mercy, without compassion, without remorse, all war depends upon it.
The next morning, they are ambushed by mortars, and the fighting continues. German tanks arrive, prompting a retreat. Easy Company holds their ground and fights, but Blythe is stuck in a ditch, too scared to move. He's coked out of his hole by Henry Welsh, and fires his weapon for the first time, embracing the hard lesson Spears taught him. Allied tanks come to their rescue, and as the Germans retreat, Blythe kills his first man. The battle ends and Blythe finds the soldier he killed. He takes his Edelweiss flower and inserts it into his collar. The boy is now a man. Several days later, a no longer shell-shocked Blythe volunteers to check out an abandoned house, even taking the lead. Sadly, Blythe is immediately shot in the neck before they can get close to the house. Medics manage to save him, and the episode ends by telling us that Blythe never recovered from his wounds and died in 1948. However, this is one of the few inaccuracies with the show, as the real Blythe recovered from a shoulder injury and continued to serve in the army, and even fought in the Korean War. He eventually died in 1967 while on active duty in West Germany. The error was because many members of East Company thought he did die in 1948, and even attended what they thought was his funeral. The guys really need to learn how to read a funeral program. Part 4 begins a few months later with a bunch of replacements joining Easy Company. Many of the veterans don't accept them right away, especially since they didn't fight on Normandy. All that animosity is cut short when the newly promoted Lipton informs them that they are to take place in a mission more ambitious than D-Day, Operation Market Garden.
No! No! Oh God! No!
The objective of Operation Market Garden was to simultaneously take several bridges on the way to a town in Holland called Arnhem, which is near the German border. The goal was to end the war before Christmas so the troops would be home when Santa came. Long story short, it was incredibly ambitious and did not go so well. As if making the jump during the middle of the day, the frickin' day, didn't send any red flags. As Easy Company prepares to depart, a man arrives, someone they'd all hoped they'd never see again, Sobel. Sobel has just become the regiment's new supply officer, and to say the men are thrilled to see him again would be a bigger lie than GTA 6's release date. Easy Company lands in Holland and have to cross through the town of Eindhoven, where they are welcomed by the Dutch, believing they are finally liberated from Nazi rule. They meet with the Dutch resistance and gather more information about the bridges, while they witness several women being dragged through the streets and shaved because they slept with Germans. The resistance supplies them with tanks, but on the way to the bridge, they're ambushed by Germans. Easy Company cuts through a small farming town to discover a lot of Tiger tanks hidden in that village. A massive fight breaks loose, and Bull gets injured and separated from the group, and is presumed dead. Easy Company is forced to retreat, during which Buck takes a bullet right up his butt. Ouch. Buck tells his men to leave him behind because he's too heavy to carry, but they find a way to carry him to safety. Easy Company gets out of there after losing many men. The replacements that survived are shaken up after getting their first brutal taste of combat. Looks like the Allies are going to have to find another way into Germany. As the Germans pour through the town, we see Bull is still alive, but forced to hide and pray he isn't spotted. When night falls, he hides out in a barn where he's discovered by the farmer and his daughter. At first, Bull doesn't trust them, but he eventually allows the farmer to help pull the shrapnel out of his shoulder, even giving him his knife to do it. Some Germans enter the barn, so they hide, but one of them finds Bull's blood on a rag. Bull kills the man as a plane flies overhead, muffling out the fight. Bull buries the man in hay and lets the farmer and his daughter leave. And as they leave, the daughter gives Bull an angry look for killing that man, and it shames him. That same night, Winters and Nixon see Eindhoven, the town that welcomed them when they arrived, being bombed. Well, I guess the Germans knew they offered aid to the Allies. The next morning, the Germans have cleared out of the village, allowing Bull to casually walk away. He's reunited with Easy Company and is touched to know that some of them never gave up on him. Part 5 begins a few weeks later, towards the end of Operation Market Garden. The British 1st Airborne were unable to secure the Arnhem Bridge, having lost 8,000 men just trying to take it. But the 82nd was barely able to take the bridge leading up to Arnhem, Nijmegen. Sink works with Lieutenant Colonel David Doby of the British 1st Airborne Division to mount a rescue for the other members of the 1st Airborne still at Arnhem under the leadership of John Frost. In the meantime, Sink wants Winters to write a report on the events that took place on October 5th. Winters struggles to write down what happened because of something he had to do on that day. After the Allies took Nijmegen Bridge, the Germans orchestrated a counterattack to retake it. Easy Company's mission was to take and hold two intersecting roads between Nijmegen and Arnhem, hence why it's called the crossroads. Easy Company engaged the Germans at night, but had to bunker down because of how many Germans were still left. The next morning, Winters led the assault to surprise attack the Germans and became haunted by the memory of having to kill an unarmed German teenager. It was also the last time Winters fired his weapon. Easy Company slaughtered the rest and took the crossroads. Sink then promotes Winters to battalion executive officer, putting Easy Company in the command of Frederick T. Moose Heiliger. So as Winters enjoys his new desk job, Moose and Easy Company work with Doby to mount the rescue and successfully bring back 140 men from the 1st Airborne. A few weeks later, Moose is unfortunately injured in a friendly fire incident, and command of Easy Company is placed under the command of Norman Dyke. Meanwhile, Nixon can tell something is bothering Winters, so he encourages his friend to take some R&R in Paris. Winter begrudgingly does, but still struggles to get over that boy. December arrives, bringing with it the extremely cold weather. Winters, now having found some peace with what he did, continues to work closely with Easy Company on the front lines. Allied forces eventually give up on trying to take Arnhem and just decided to blow up the bridge from the air. Now the priority is establishing a strong foothold on whatever area they were able to capture, driving the Germans out of Holland and Belgium. So Easy Company makes their way to Bastown, in what will be known as Battle of the Bulge. Part 6 centers around the story of combat medic Eugene Doc Rowe, as he tries to survive both the harsh winter in the frozen Ardennes forest and save as many lives as he can during the Battle of the Bulge. He, like everyone else in Easy Company, is lacking proper winter clothing and food, let alone enough ammunition because any resupply is accidentally dropped to the Germans. Eugene makes up for this by scrounging around dead, frozen soldiers for medical supplies, even from his own men. A thick fog blankets the forest, making it impossible to know where everyone is, meaning Allied and German troops are literally walking into each other. The only cover anyone can get is by digging a foxhole and waiting for something to happen.
How'd your morphine, guys?
At one point, Eugene checks on Joe Toya. Eugene learns that Toya is walking around with no shoes in the snow because he took them off for 1 second and they got blown up by some random mortar fire. Eugene promises to find him another pair, and the next morning, Wayne A. Sonny Sisk gets his leg shattered. So Eugene drives him to a makeshift hospital in Bastogne. There, Eugene befriends one of the Belgian nurses, Renee, and she's able to give him some supplies to take back to the front lines, including some shoes for Toye. Despite getting Toye new boots, he went too long without him and already developed trench foot, one of the worst kinds of foot you can have. Toye refuses to leave the front line, so Eugene orders Toye to find a way to keep his feet dry, which is kind of impossible when you're surrounded by freezing cold snow. The next morning, Easy Company gets a little bit of luck when Allied planes finally drop supplies to them. It's practically Christmas, which if you think about it, it might be. I doubt anyone's keeping track of the days. As Eugene and the rest of the Easy Company restock their supplies, Eugene assists Renee in trying to save a dying soldier's life. They end up losing him, and it devastates the both of them, but they find comfort in each other. After dealing with all the fighting in the cold, Sink arrives to tell everyone that the Germans had asked for their surrender, but their commander, General McAuliffe, rejected it, or in his words, nuts. Everyone laughs at McAuliffe's response, except for Eugene, who looks like he's about to reach a breaking point. That night, everyone celebrates Christmas in their own ways, from doing everything they can do to stop shaking from the cold, to learning that their wives were leaving them. The Germans even send over a nice Christmas present, an entire arsenal of mortar fire. Oh, how thoughtful of them. Eugene takes another wounded man into Bastogne, where it's currently being bombed. He tries to find Renee, but discovers that she died during the bombing. Man, does this guy ever catch a break?
Medic! Get your ass out here!
Eugene returns to Easy Company and uses Renee's bandana to patch up another soldier. Even in death, she was helping wounded men. Part 7 takes place during the Battle of the Bulge, but this time it centers around Lipton. Easy Company has held the line, so now their task is pushing the Germans back through the Bulge. During this, Donald Hubler gets a hold of a German Luger pistol, something he had been wanting since Normandy. He shows it around to everything, but then accidentally shoots himself in the leg, cutting a main artery, and he dies from blood loss. Lipton, along with several others, have lost faith in Dyke as their new leader because he's not as assertive as Winters. Unfortunately, Winters doesn't have the authority to make himself platoon leader anymore, but almost everyone in Easy Company can agree that the next most logical choice to lead is Buck. But even Buck wouldn't be a good leader because he hasn't been the same ever since he got shot in Holland. Despite this, Lipton still tries to sympathize with Dyke, as he sees it as his job as first sergeant to protect the integrity of the company. During this, General Patton rescued the 101st as a part of a ceremonious propaganda event, forcing Easy Company to return to their old foxholes overlooking the town of Foy. The Germans still occupy the town, and there is evidence of the Germans shelling their foxholes, but they can't find where the artillery is. The obvious decision would be to occupy another section of the forest, but their orders were to hold the line there. So the best they can do is fortify their foxholes and pray. What could possibly go wrong? As if on cue, the Germans immediately start bombing them, prompting everyone to scramble inside of a foxhole as trees explode all around them. The shelling stops, and everyone is shocked to find Toy's leg blown off. Guarnery tries to drag him to another foxhole, just as the shelling commences again. Buck tries to help them, but then Guarnery's leg is blown off. When the dust settles, Dyke finds Lipton and tells him he's in charge while he gets help. Jeez, this guy's worse than Sobel. Buck sees Toy and Guarnery's broken bodies and has a complete mental breakdown. Eugene tends to them, and Lipton tries to comfort a broken Buck. If Buck wasn't the same since Holland, he's definitely not the same now. With Buck on his way back to the States, and Dyke doing something, Lipton assumes the leadership role of the company. In the days that follow, Easy Company clears the Germans out of the trees, east and west of Foy. So now all they have to do is to take Foy and drive the Germans out of the Bulge and Belgium. More shelling takes place that night, and Luce, the only member in Easy Company to not get injured, struggles to find a foxhole. He sees Muck and Cantala trying to guide them to him when a shell lands right in their foxhole, killing Muck and Kantala. Luce then makes it to Lipton's foxhole, where a dud lands right next to their foxhole. Lose must be the world's greatest good luck charm. Muck and Kantala's deaths hit Malarkey the most, as they were his best friends. Lipton cheers him up by giving him Hubler's Luger, as Malarkey also wanted to bring one home from the war. Lipton continues to lift the morale of the men despite all they've been through while they prepare to attack Foy. Lipton then expresses his concerns to Winters about Dyke leading them into battle, but all Winters can do is hear him out. Easy Company attacks Foy the next day, and as expected, Dyke doesn't have a clue as to what he should be doing. Countless men needlessly die under his direction, so Winters has Spears relieve Dyke and take over as platoon leader. Spears practically single-handedly saves the day, especially when he charges straight at the enemy like he was playing Call of Duty on easy mode. Foy is taken, but Easy Company isn't allowed to rest or mourn the dead because they have to continue taking Belgium. They are allowed the chance to spend a night in a convent, and it's the first night they've spent indoors in a month. The nuns let them hear their choir, allowing Lipton some rest from lifting the company's morale. Spears then lifts Lipton's spirits by telling him that he's practically been the one in charge of the men ever since Winters got promoted, and then reveals that Lipton's been promoted for his actions. Well deserved, if you ask me. Part 8 begins with Easy Company on their way to Hagenau, France, as the Germans have made one last push to take Europe. David Webster was injured back in Holland and was just now released from the hospital to rejoin Easy Company. However, he doesn't receive a warm welcome from the others because he didn't endure the hell of Bastogne, let alone try to escape from his hospital and rejoin the fight like many others did. The poor guy gets placed in 2nd Platoon despite having fought in D-Day and Market Garden. The guy might as well be another replacement. Speaking of replacements, Easy Company gets assigned another one, 2nd Lieutenant Henry Jones, and he gets placed in 2nd Platoon alongside Webster. Jones will be the platoon's second in command under Malarkey, who became 2nd Platoon's leader after getting promoted. Jones may have authority, but he's still a replacement and doesn't understand how things work on the front lines.
So you want to introduce me to the men?
Some are sleeping downstairs, the rest are right here.
That night, Spears is tasked with finding 15 men to cross a river and take German prisoners for interrogation. Malarkey is put in charge of the men until Jones offers to take his place, wanting to prove that he belongs here. Winters and Spears allow Jones to be an observer and instead put Martin in command of the mission. They stealthily make their way across the river into the German side and reach the targeted house. They capture their prisoners and somehow make it back as all hell breaks loose, only losing one man, who died from his own grenade. Sink is so happy with how successful the patrol was that he orders another one for the next night. He doesn't want to change a thing, and even orders the same exact men to partake in the patrol. Obviously, this is a lot more of a suicide mission than the first time. So Winters secretly disobeys orders and tells the men to pretend they went on patrol, but were unsuccessful. Sink never suspects a thing. During this, Winters gets promoted to Major, and Jones and Webster gain the respect of Easy Company, no longer seen as replacements. By now, Easy Company's campaign has taken them from England to France to Holland and Belgium. Now, it's time to take Germany. Part 9 begins with the war in Europe almost over. By now, Allied forces have cut through Germany and laid waste to all the cities on their way to Berlin. Hundreds of thousands of German forces are surrendering each day, and Allied forces don't waste time pillaging some of the townsfolk's supplies and food, even occupying their expensive homes. This causes German civilians to resent the Allies, believing they've done nothing wrong. The episode centers around Nixon, who just recently participated in Operation Varsity, which was a massive airborne assault across the Rhine River. Nixon and a few others barely made it out of the plane before it exploded, and now Nixon has to write to their families telling them that every one of those boys died as heroes, even if he doesn't believe it. This causes him to turn even more to alcohol as he angrily reflects on everything. To make things worse, Winters informs Nixon that he's been demoted from captain to operations officer. Nixon doesn't care anymore. Everyone, including every new replacement that comes through here, keeps wondering when they're going to make the jump into Berlin and finally end this war. Nixon, on the other hand, is only concerned about finding more alcohol, especially his favorite whiskey, Vat 69. Nice. Nixon then gets a letter from his wife saying she's divorcing him and taking everything, the house, their kid, and their dog. The guy finally snaps and he's had enough of this war, just like everyone else here. Easy Company is shipped out to Landsberg in southern Germany, and Winters has several of the men go out into small patrols to secure the area. Nixon takes this opportunity to search the home belonging to the Nazi general stationed there. He doesn't find any Vat 69, but instead finds the general's wife. She angrily stares Nixon out of her house and is furious he tarnished her husband's reputation. One of the patrols makes their way through the Bavarian forest and finds everything eerily quiet, and there's a very potent smell of death in the air, and the men discover something more horrifying than anything they've faced before. Perconte races back to inform Winters of what they've found, and it turns out to be Hitler's solution to the Jewish question.
Frank, what is it?
I don't know, sir.
No one in the army knew Jewish concentration camps existed, or knew the extent of how horribly the Jews were being treated. And it's not like anyone trained to handle a situation like this. Joseph Liebgott, the only Jew in Easy Company, translates for one of the prisoners, trying to understand this place. But all it does is raise more questions for Easy Company. So many why questions.
The women's camp is at the next railroad stop.
Winters gets a message to Sink and has Easy Company raid the stores in Landsberg for food and other supplies for the prisoners. The civilians protest, and Webster snaps and pulls out a gun on one of the bakers. The baker admits he didn't know about the camp, and Webster refuses to believe that he didn't at least smell the stench of death coming through the trees. Easy Company feeds the prisoners, but then Sink arrives with the regiment's surgeon, who has some unfortunate news. They have to stop feeding everyone for fear of refeeding syndrome. The Jews are so malnourished that the reintroduction of nutrition into their bodies will kill them. The only thing Easy Company do is keep them locked up in the camp until they can figure out what to do with them and properly monitor them. Damn. The next day, the commander of the 101st, General Taylor, declares martial law and orders the Landsberg civilians to clean up all the dead bodies. Nixon goes back to the camp to see for himself, and he sees the once proud German people finally realize what they were fighting for. Nixon then sees the Nazi general's wife in a ditch overflowing with dead bodies, many of whom her husband probably killed. Whatever pride she had when they first met is irrelevant now. A few days later, Nixon returns to East Company and informs them that Hitler is dead. Webster remarks that Hitler should have killed himself 3 years ago and saved them the trouble. Nixon replies he should have, but he didn't. The final part in this miniseries begins with Easy Company on their way to Eagle's Nest in Berchtesgaden, Hitler's vacation home where he mostly conducted business. The war is practically over, so there's no resistance on their way there, aside from a few impenetrable roadblocks up the mountain pass. Easy Company makes themselves at home, and Winters informs everyone that the German army finally surrendered. The war in Europe is over. Winters then surprises Nixon by showing him Hermann Göring's house and his private stock of alcohol in the cellar. He lets Nixon have the first pick before the other Allied forces arrive. However, the war is still raging in the Pacific, so Easy Company will be redeployed there, but those with enough service points will get to go home. No one is thrilled by this because they already won their war. Now they have to go finish someone else's war for possibly another 3 years. Winters, on the other hand, is eager to rejoin the fight and takes this opportunity to be reassigned to the 13th Airborne, so he can join the war in the Pacific sooner, but he is denied. As they wait to be redeployed, many of the men grow restless, being stuck in Austria. Liebgott takes his opportunity to track down and execute a concentration camp commandant at his farm. A replacement named Yanovich, who only needed 10 more points in order to be sent home, dies in a random car accident. Another drunk replacement from one company kills a British and German officer, and then wounds another friendly named Grant by shooting him in the head. Spears finds a brain surgeon to save Grant's life, while Easy Company beats the replacement. Spears enters, about to kill the man, but changes his mind and hands him over to the MPs. Maybe the rumors about him weren't true. During this, Winters carries out the last-minute promotions and reassignments for many of the members of Easy Company. He even runs into his old friend, Sobel, and salutes him, but Sobel doesn't salute him back. Winters demands Sobel that they salute the rank, not the man, so Sobel salutes back. Winters then witnesses a German general speak one last time to his men while Liebgott translates, and realizes the German soldiers shared the same brotherhood amongst each other as Easy Company did. Eventually, the war ends in the Pacific before they redeploy there. So, Easy Company celebrates the end of the war with a game of baseball, and as they play, Winters narrates what happened to everyone in Easy Company. Some went on to better lives, some stayed in the army. Many members of Easy Company kept in touch after the war, having shared and experienced a world at war. In the end, they became more than soldiers. They became a band of brothers.
I cherish the memories of a question my grandson asked me the other day when he said, "Grandpa, were you a hero in the war?" Grandpa said no. But I served in a company of heroes.
Wow, I don't know about you guys, but I need a minute to process everything. In the meantime, feel free to check out another one of our videos. And please like and subscribe and share this video with anybody else who you think would love this recap, and I will see you guys next time.